What's up, everybody? Ron Placone here, reporting for Status Coup. So, as you may already be aware, I have been very active in the bad internet bills effort to stop horrible tech policy from becoming law. You may have heard about this already. You may have signed on already. If this is your first time hearing about it, here is the quick cliff notes to get everyone up to speed. So, this is from badinternetbills.com. Tell Congress, say no to bad internet bills. Congress is trying to push through a swarm of harmful internet bills that would severely impact human rights, expand surveillance, and enable censorship on the internet. On July 20th, we're launching a week of action to get loud about our opposition to legislation like KOSA and Earn It. Basically, one of the oldest dirty tricks in the congressional book is to pass a bunch of horrible legislation by tacking it on to must pass legislation like a spending bill or something like that, and kind of pushing it through in the dead of night when no one's paying attention and then going on vacation. Congress is trying to do this as August recess is upon us. We got wind that they're trying to push through some terrible tech bills. So Fight for the Future, who I collaborate with, along with the ACLU and EFF, decided to launch this week of action to let lawmakers know, hey, we're paying attention. So since we've done this, KOSA has come front and center. Now, KOSA is the Kids Online Safety Act, which in verbiage is supposed to keep kids safe online and keep kids away from some of the toxicity of social media, which that sounds like a noble thing, right? Well, of course it does. Here's the problem, though. This bill doesn't actually do that at all. Here's a wonderful piece from Teen Vogue from one of my colleagues over at Fight for the Future, Sarah Phillips. The Kids Online Safety Act would harm LGBTQ plus youth, restrict access to information and community. One day in mid-July, the revered fan fiction site Archive of Our Own, a bottomless repository for stories set in thousands of fictional worlds, suddenly went dark. It was inaccessible for more than 24 hours. The volunteer-run site had been targeted by cyber attackers who reportedly had religious and political motivations for aiming to take down the site. Now, right now, there are a handful of bills being rushed through Congress in the 11th hour before August recess that could permanently damage the ability of a site like that to reach its audience. The main threat is the Kids Online Safety Act. Framed as protecting children, KOSA creates a duty of care that requires apps and websites to, quote, prevent and mitigate harms to children, like anxiety and depression their products might cause. If the app or website doesn't take steps to mitigate those harms, usually through removing content, it can be held liable. Protecting children from harmful content with big tech taking the fall may sound great until you consider who will have the power to decide what content is harmful and therefore what content is removed. KOSA authorizes state attorneys general to be the ultimate arbiters of what is good or bad for kids. If a state attorney general asserts that information about gender affirming care or abortion care would cause a child depression or anxiety, they could sue an app or website for not removing that content. In other words, who decides what's safe or not? A bunch of internet bureaucrats. Imagine that in a state like Texas or Florida or really anywhere else. It's just there's a couple states that kind of stick out in particular. So that's what's going on with KOSA. In reality, it's a censorship bill that most specifically targets LGBTQIA youth. In fact, the Heritage Foundation recently said the quiet part out loud, where they basically said, yeah, we support KOSA because it suppresses information from transgender youth. It helps stop transgender youth from getting potentially life-saving resources that they need. So that's what's happening with KOSA. Now, this morning, at least as of the recording of this morning, Thursday, July 27th, there was a committee hearing on this bill, among other bills, but KOSA was among the bills that they discussed in this hearing. And it happened at 10 a.m. Eastern time, which, by the way, this is a trend that I got to do a quick aside about. Policy wonks in the United States who live on the West Coast, they're really hard on us. If you're into tech policy and you're not a morning person, speaking from experience, they don't make it easy on you. These hearings are always at 7 a.m. Pacific time. There are some policy enthusiasts that live on the West Coast, United States. Anyway, rant over. Moving on. I digress. So KOSA was among the bills that was discussed, and there's some good news and bad news. We'll do the bad news first. First of all, it got out of committee. It got through the Senate committee. Now that does not mean it's a law. So don't go panicking yet. That certainly does not mean it's a law. It still needs to hit the floor at the Senate. It needs to formally get through the Senate, and it needs to get through the House, and then it needs to be signed by President Biden, which is the next piece of bad news here. So the first piece of bad news, it did get out of committee. Second piece of bad news, Biden has expressed his support for KOSA. So those are two pieces of bad news. Now, a disclaimer going along with that bad news. We did expect it to get out of committee. That's one of the reasons we started this whole week of action in the first place. We knew that they were going to bring KOSA up. We knew that they were going to push hard for KOSA. We knew it was likely to get out of committee. So here's the good news. The good news is that during that hearing, a lot of, well, not a lot, but several members of the Senate did express concerns about the bill. And Markey in particular brought up the concerns when it came to the LGBTQIA communities. And basically that signals that it's not ready for the floor. Even Ted Cruz, who totally supports this bill, kind of had a moment of pause where he basically said, well, there's still some work that needs done. Even Ted Cruz didn't have the utmost confidence that this bill could get through, which is a good sign, especially since it does have considerably less support in the House. So that's the good news. They basically signaled it's not ready for the floor yet. That means it could get out of committee, and it might not go any further than that. That happens all the time. However, usually when that happens, it's with good legislation, not terrible legislation. So that indicates that what we're doing is working. Yes, it got out of committee like we expected it to, but people are expressing concerns, saying it's not quite ready for the floor. So that means there's a certain controversy attached to KOSA now. And that's thanks to the big online movement that's been going on this past week. So please, please don't stop. We're making progress. We can stop this bill. Go to badinternetbills.com. Sign if you have not already. Go to stopkosa.com. That's stopkosa.com. Sign and call your lawmakers. It just takes a moment. Call them. Tell them you're paying attention and you do not want this terrible bill passed. Stopkosa.com. Badinternetbills.com. And folks, of course, you can catch me on the road. For everybody out in the UK, I'll be part of the Edinburgh Fringe Festival August 16th through 27th. Those shows are free. It's part of the free Fringe. So you can just go to my website, ronplacone.com, for more information. My shows are at 4 p.m. each day. That's August 16th through 27th at the venue 32 below the Little Cellar. And I'll be in my neighborhood at San Pedro, October 21st. San Pedro, California, doing a comedy series in my neighborhood. The first headliner along with me is Stephanie Blum. Tickets for that show are at ronplacone.com. And again, folks, please keep it up. We are winning and we can do this. Badinternetbills.com, stopkosa.com. We can stop these bills. We just got to keep it up. We got to keep it up. Badinternetbills.com, stopkosa.com. And this is Ron Placone for Status Coup, signing out.